My next guest, Larry Klayman, is the founder of Freedom Watch and a former federal prosecutor. His website is freedomwatchusa.org. Larry, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry. I apologize that I'm in an airport. If you hear any background noise, I got caught in traffic.
Not a problem.
I'm in Las Vegas on the Bundy trial.
Not a
Thank
problem.
you, Larry. How you been?
I've been well. Now, Larry, you've represented most of the women who've made accusations against Bill and against Hillary. Tell us who you've represented.
I represented Juanita Broderick, of course, Jennifer Flowers, Dolly Kyle Browning. She now calls herself Dolly Kyle, Paula Jones, and Kathleen Willey. I represented nearly all of them, Larry, except for one that fled to Paris to get away from Bill Clinton. She was a runner-up to Miss America at the time.
Now, Larry, I'm sure you heard Hillary say just, I think it was 2 days ago, we need to encourage women to come forward and tell their stories.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that wasn't the case back in the 1990s. We know that Hillary ran the war room with George Stephanopoulos, who now disgracefully is the anchor of Good Morning America on ABC, and George James Carville, the political consultant. And they were out there, and they were trying to destroy the women, and that's why I represented them. I didn't represent them on the sex stuff. I represented them because they were getting audited by the IRS. Their children were being threatened. They were being threatened. Their homes were being broken into, and it was a terrible situation. It was, talk about sexual harassment. This goes way beyond even that.
Larry, one of the things we were talking about before you came over was how people at the top enabled much of this kind of behavior. And I would point that same blame on people like Carville and Stephanopoulos. As you pointed out, they were the ones that were involved in this so-called war room that had been set up for a rapid response so that when women made accusations, they would be trashed, they'd be maligned. And here he is, Stephanopoulos, now the quote chief news anchor for ABC. It just drives me crazy every Sunday morning when I see this guy, Larry.
No, it does, and I'll tell you, I'm in Las Vegas right now. It reminds me, I brought a lawsuit for Jennifer Flowers here years ago on defamation because Bill Clinton lied. She had a tape recording of her conversation with him where he admitted to an affair, where he admitted to trying to destroy Mario Cuomo, who was running against him at the time, called him mafia. These are low-class people. I mean, you talk about white trash. This is what these people are, the Clintons in particular. And, you know, it's a terrible situation, and now it's coming back again. People are being reminded of it, of course, because of what's been going on. But the Clintons are ruthless, and, you know, this is what they did. And our clients took it seriously because whatever the case may be, there were 80 people who were material witnesses during the Clinton years with regard to the Lewinsky scandal and the 39 other scandals. And many of them just disappeared. I'm not making any allegations here, but a lot of people think it wasn't accidental.
I was just rereading a piece about a Washington Post reporter and Clinton biographer named David Moranis. Got a Pulitzer Prize for his coverage of the race in 1992. And he's talking about a top aide to Bill Clinton named Betsy Wright, who sat down with Bill Clinton in 1988 and went over all the women that he had slept with, where they had slept, and what kind of accusation they may or may not make. And she talked him out of running in 1988. She sat down with him again in 1992, did the same thing, and tried to talk him out of it. And, of course, he refused and ran. So here you have a woman, Betsy Wright, who knew about all these things. What does she say or do about it? Nothing.
Nothing. Well, Hillary Clinton knew about all these things,
well,
too.
Yeah, well, that's without question. We haven't talked about her yet. Now, I want to talk about how do you know she was the one who was leading the nuts or slut strategy? How do you know that?
Well, it was actually admitted. Stephanopoulos and Carville wrote a book where they said they were part of a war room with Hillary Clinton. And our clients, you know, came into contact with Hillary's people in the White House counsel's office. They threatened them. Dolly Kyle Browning, for instance, wrote a semi-fictional book about her relationship with Bill Clinton. And Bruce Lindsay, who was deputy White House counsel, Hillary Clinton's partner before that at the Rose Law Firm, told her she would be destroyed. We will destroy you. I mean, she took that obviously as a threat to life and limb. So the former partner at Rose Law Firm doesn't make a threat unless Hillary Clinton's behind it.
I'm talking to Larry Klayman. He is the founder of Freedom Watch and a former federal prosecutor. His website, freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org. Larry, Juanita Broaddrick go on Dateline NBC, make a very credible, moving, chilling claim that she had been raped, and that 2 weeks after the alleged rape, Hillary verbally intimidated her, and nobody on the left gives a damn. How does that happen?
Well, it happens because the feminists in this country, and they control a lot of the women's groups and the women's political action committees. They just wanted Bill Clinton to be in there. That's all. They didn't care. It's only when a conservative or libertarian or someone that they don't agree with politically or otherwise commits some kind of sexual abuse, which is serious, of course, if it can be proven, only they are to be condemned, but not their own. And, of course, today, we're seeing a different mentality because the rats are fleeing the nest, Larry, and the rats are turning on themselves because now it's become so obvious with some of these gross abuses, these gross sexual harassments and rapes and whatever, that their credibility is being destroyed. So they're running for the exits.
My guest is Larry Klayman, founder of Freedom Watch, former federal prosecutor. Larry, I want to talk to you about where the Mueller investigation sits when we come back. I also want to talk to you about this book called No One Left to Lie To, written by Christopher Hitchens. And the reason is that in that book, he alleges that there were 3 credible claims of rape against Bill Clinton. And the book was written, and the foreword to the book was written by David Brinkley, a very respected historian, who praised the research that Christopher Hitchens had done. Yet the book did not seem to have the kind of effect that I would have thought it would have had. I'm talking to Larry Klayman. He is an attorney, founder of Freedom Watch, former federal prosecutor. FreedomWatchUSA.org is his website. Larry, don't leave town. I'm Larry Elder.
The great story here, for anybody willing to find it and write about it and explain it, is this vast right-wing conspiracy that has been conspiring against my husband since the day he announced for president.
888-971-SAGE. Larry Klayman has represented virtually all of the major accusers of Bill Clinton, female accusers of Bill Clinton and of Hillary. He founded Judicial Watch, now runs Freedom Watch, former federal prosecutor. Website freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org. Larry Klayman, according to Christopher Hitchens, a lefty who was well-liked by the left until he began to write critically about Bill Clinton, says that there were 3 credible allegations of rape against Bill Clinton.
Well, that's right. I was a friend of Christopher Hitchens, and obviously we were politically different, but Christopher Hitchens was a man of ethics, and may his soul rest in peace. Mm-hmm. And he was the only one on the left of any prominence that really went against Bill Clinton at the time. And he was absolutely right about everything he said. But his colleagues, he was ostracized by them because he was ethical, and they are not.
Mm-hmm. And this is the guy.
Pay tribute to Christopher Hitchens.
Absolutely, this is the guy who wrote for years for the Nation magazine. You can't get more left wing than that. In fact, he was angry at Clinton politically because he thought Clinton was too centrist. So this is this guy's politics.
I'll tell you a joke. I had a rally in front of the White House one day because of Chinagate. Clinton was taking all this illegal money from the communist Chinese, and Christopher was speaking. And I asked him, I said, what do you want me to tell the crowd? They're mostly conservatives, Well, tell him I'm a friend of Mao. I said, no, I don't think I'm going to tell you that.
All right. Let's talk about the Mueller investigation, the collusion investigation. I just now read that the special counsel has delayed grand jury testimony because there are some signs that there might be a deal with Michael Flynn. What have you heard?
Well, that's what I've heard. And where are we hearing all this, Larry? This is what's important. For many, many months, almost a year, we've had constant leaks of grand jury information and strategy by the Mueller team, quite apart from all the conflicts of interest. And most of those prosecutors, if not all, are very pro-Clinton, pro-Obama. One is even, in left field in a different way, Andrew Weissman, who's just completely dishonest, period. And that's been proven. There have been a lot of articles about that. But these leaks are a criminal violation. You know that. You're a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And no one's done anything about it. The judge is sitting on top of these grand jury investigations. Burl Howe, chief judge in the District of Columbia, federal judge, the one in Virginia. They sit there and let it happen because they're both leftists. They're both appointed by Obama. Now, what I did 3 months ago, I filed a complaint with the Office of Professional Responsibility of the Justice Department and also the Inspector General saying, do an investigation of this. No response. They wouldn't even tell me that they received the complaint. So just a few days ago, I filed a complaint in district court for a writ of mandamus in federal district court in Washington, D.C. to force an investigation of this, because if the Justice Department can confirm this, Mueller should be pushed off the case and get another independent counsel. He should have to be fired for this because it's illegal, and he should be prosecuted for it. This is really a dirty prosecution, and Mueller is sitting on top of it, and he's just a political hack, for lack of a better word, like many others in Washington, D.C.
Put your crystal ball on, and you tell us what you think is ultimately going to happen. What will we hear about 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now? What's going to be the conclusion of all of this?
Well, even before we get to that, I think the president needs new lawyers, if I may say, Larry. Is that the 3 lawyers he has, Ty Cobb, who represented John Wang, the suspected Chinese spy during that Chinagate scandal I told you about. He ran interference for Bill and Hillary Clinton. That's not the guy you want primarily defending you. John Dowd is a establishment Republican. Establishment Muslims like to put a knife in the back of Donald Trump. And Jay Sekulow is a very fine religious rights lawyer, and he's a friend of mine, but he's not a criminal defense lawyer. He needs somebody outside of Washington. And if he doesn't get somebody who's really strong that will push back, that will do what I did and go after Mueller, and also the wiretapping of the Trump Tower, they should be bringing cases for violation of Fourth Amendment constitutional rights. They're sitting there and they're taking punches. So here's what I think is going to happen, is that it's very likely that Flynn's going to cut a deal. They're going to use that if for no other basis to claim there's some Russian collusion. I don't believe that there is, and I hope that the general doesn't do it, that he doesn't cave in. But I think that if the Republicans lose the House of Representatives, and they're certainly well on their way to doing that in 2018, I believe that the President Trump will be impeached and will go to a trial. And this is a terrible thing. I don't believe he'll ever be removed. We've never done it in our 240-year history.
Right.
But right now, when we're facing these threats with North Korea and Iran, and we have internal issues to deal with, to have the president preoccupied like that is dangerous. But I think that he's on his way to impeachment, I'm sorry to say, because his lawyers are not pushing back. They're just going along for the ride.
Larry Klayman is my guest, founder of Freedom Watch and a former federal prosecutor. Website, freedomwatchusa.org. Larry, we come back. I want to ask you a little bit more about Comey and whether or not there's going to be any kind of action against Hillary. All that's coming up. Larry Klayman is my guest, founder of Freedom Watch, former federal prosecutor. freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org. Larry, I know you used to be a federal prosecutor, as I just said. I heard from John Christian Adams. He said when the Obama administration came in, there was a directive that we were not going to go after any black criminal defendants. Is that true?
Well, I don't know about that. We do know that, and one of the reasons I left the Justice Department, Larry, as a young lawyer and later started Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch is because I wanted to form my own Justice Department because I did see that kind of thing there, is that if you were on the right side of the street, you got a free pass. I mean, Hillary Clinton's a good example. Mm-hmm. But if you're on the wrong side, you wound up getting prosecuted. And I saw that more than once, and I saw politics entering into things, and I said, I'm not going to be part of this. I was very proud to be a Justice Department lawyer. I still am, in the sense of what it really stands for, not the way what it's become. But, yeah, that is very conceivable that happened. I don't have any information about that, though.
Larry, you're critical of the president's criminal defense team. The leader of the team, I suspect, is Ty Cobb. Isn't he the one that was found in an open restaurant talking about his defense strategy and was overheard by somebody else, by some reporter?
Well, that's right. That's right, Larry. Washington's a club, okay? And, you know, what is more important to those lawyers is their own standing in that club. You know, they go to the soirees in Georgetown and rub shoulders. And, you know, I never wanted to be a member of a club that would have me as a member, to take a phrase from Groucho Marx. Right. And that's why I do what I do. But that's the thing. And so everything's clubby, and they don't think about their clients, and they're out there having lunch and making a mistake. But I alluded to it earlier. Ty Cobb is the great-grandson of the famous Ty Cobb, by the way. Mm-hmm. And I used to say that he struck out during the Clinton years. But Ty Cobb represented John Wang. John Wang was put at the Commerce Department by Hillary Clinton, and it was thought that he was passing classified information because he was getting CIA briefings every day to the Chinese on economic information. And this is what sparked the Chinagate scandal, which put me on the map and Judicial Watch on the map. And This is a guy who was actually running interference for the Clintons. So why would you want him as your lawyer, particularly given the clubbiness of Washington, D.C., and you see that with what happened.
Mm-hmm. Larry, why hasn't a special counsel been formed to go after Hillary?
Well, Jeff Sessions, he's put his head in the sand. He's a nice man. I talked to him months ago. I wanted to review the Bundy case and the Arpaio case. I couldn't get a hold of him after that. Later he said, I'm not taking any position. The fact is, he has serious problems with his testimony in front of the U.S. Senate. I'm not saying he perjured himself, but he came close to it, in quote, not remembering that he had meetings with Russian ambassadors. So he's sensitive about that. And then, of course, he himself is being investigated by Mueller because he was part of this decision to fire Comey. So as a result, he's very reflexive, and he thinks if he pushes too hard, that he might wind up getting indicted himself. But no one will say that, okay? Because, you never say what's actually true. You do, Larry. Mm-hmm. That's why you have the great following that you have. And I do. But, the people that you see generally on the shows don't want to talk about that. But that's the reason that Sessions has become inert, and I have said either do your job or resign because you're not doing your job.
The revelation that the DNC paid for this opposition research that produced this dossier, hasn't that pretty much destroyed the credibility of the entire Mueller investigation?
Well, it has, yeah, because Mueller, first of all, is not a man of integrity. When anyone uses that phrase in Washington, look out. Okay, it's just a catchphrase, and then the young pundits pick up on it, and it sounds good, so we use it. Mm-hmm. Okay, but Mueller was the guy who was supposed to be investigating that and Uranium One when he was FBI director. He took a dive on both occasions. I had experience with him. I represented 2 FBI agents that had information leading up to 9/11. It was buried by the superiors at the FBI, and Mueller tried to drum them out of the FBI. And when they came forward with that, they were trying to take away their security clearances. And Mueller, there's been articles recently about other cases that Mueller has just either covered up or fouled up, and he's not a man of integrity. He's not. And he is the product of the Republican and the Democrat establishment, and that establishment uniformly almost wants to destroy President Trump.
Larry, we're almost
a perfect guy.
We're almost out of time. We only have about 30 seconds left in our interview. If President Trump were listening, and I'm sure he is, what would you tell him?
I would tell him, push back. You have great instincts. I love President Trump, frankly. It's a breath of fresh air that someone will actually tell it like it is. I've been saying this stuff for years. To hear a president say it, warms my heart. But he's got to be himself, and he's got to have lawyers that are going to be like him that will fight back. The best defense is a good offense because you keep the ball away from the other team. They've got to go after Mueller in a legal way. He doesn't have to be fired, but go after for all the offenses that he's done, whether it's the leaks, right, whether it's the conflicts of interest and everything else. And he has to be removed.
Larry Klayman.
We have a hearing on December 19th, Larry. I'm asking the judge ultimately to remove him.
Larry Klayman's been my guest, founder of Freedom Watch, former federal prosecutor, freedomwatchusa.org. Freedomwatchusa.org. Larry, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Larry. God bless you.